Good evening. This is Catherine Smith standing in for Chipicon for the weekly Otherworldly show. Our guest tonight is Starwolf, who has brought his collection of meteorites and other extraterrestrial rocks, and he's going to talk to us about their properties. And it's all yours, Starwolf.
Okay, well, actually, I'm going to start with two pieces that aren't either meteorites or tektites, but sometimes I've seen lately are being sold as, especially as Moldavite.
Really?
And this beast here, that is, quote, synthetic green obsidian.
Synthetic.
Which is a fancy way, yes.
Glass.
Which is a fancy way of saying it is glass. It's nice green glass, and if you're into Game of Thrones and you want a piece of, quote, dragon glass, bingo, well, you've got one.
If it's obsidian, that's what dragon glass is.
But it's not, so.
It's listed as synthetic obsidian. It actually comes in a couple of colors, green, this nice green. It's also a dark blue, a light aqua. And the other one, oddly enough, is that I've seen occasionally sold as Moldavite, is this stuff. This is blue goldstone. It also comes in green. I didn't have an example of that.
Okay. Well, goldstone comes in a lot of colors, yeah. Yeah,
and this is simply glass that has had aluminum powder mixed into it. It's pretty. It's one of my, I've got that. Don't worry, we will get to that one. So what we have here, now that I have gone to the what isn't a Tectite, because unfortunately I could not find my meteorite samples. They're somewheres, but I think they're buried. So I've got some from basically around the world. And we are going to start at
place.
Actually, they're in the middle of a pile. I didn't have time to shift, along with the Tektites I normally give away. But we're starting with the common or garden variety Tectite. This one comes from Guangdong in China. Used to be called, well, I forget what they used to call it before they went over to the Peking dialect. But this is one of the more common ones. These also can come from, no, I'm sorry, this one is from Morocco. Sorry. There's strew fields of this stuff all over the planet. This is basically, did she make it?
Yep.
Oh, goody. Welcome aboard,
There she is.
Sorry.
All right, everybody look busy. The boss is here.
Yeah, it happened.
Well, I see you recording, so keep on going. So
you can thank Catherine Smith for that. I couldn't get in for love nor money. So basically, we're starting here with the common or garden variety Tectite. And if you've got these in your garden, I really want to visit your house.
Yeah.
Because this is basically, as it has been described to me in a couple of papers I've read, this is what happens when a large enough meteor or asteroid smacks into the moon.
Oh.
And enough ejecta is pushed out that it makes it to Earth, fuses through the heat of re-entry, and actually arrives at the surface unvaporized.
Now, how about Moldavite, which originates from the Earth?
That's a different kettle of fish.
Yeah.
Because you've got two types of Tektites. You've got the Tektites that originate from outer space, and those are actually the most common. And you've got the ones like my favorite stone here, Moldavite.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, that's cool. I did not know that there were terrestrial and extraterrestrial variations on Tektites.
Yes. Most Tektites actually are a mixture of extraterrestrial and terrestrial material, just like meteorites. And like I said, I'll start with the Tectites. Somebody mentioned Libyan or Egyptian glass. That's this stuff.
Oh.
It comes
Oh,
from the
wow.
Libyan. Yeah, I got a big chunk. I got a couple of chunks. This comes from the Libyan desert. By the way, does not just include Libya, it includes most of the Western Desert Plateau of Egypt. Yes, it is the yellow one. Excuse me, I am once again going to yellow or yellowish white, depending on what direction I put the light on it.
Oh, okay, there. As you turn it, it went from blue-white to greenish white.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
That depends on the inclusions and the angle that it polarizes the light at. Now, what this stuff was formed was when a rather large asteroid becoming a meteorite smacked into the northern coast of Africa. If you look along the coast, you suddenly see this big dip.
Yeah.
That's called the Gulf of Sirte. Well,
Yeah.
that's a crater or the edge of a crater.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. A lot of times you find these. I wish I could get hold of some of the Tectites that came from things like, when something gouged out Hudson's Bay.
Really?
Yeah,
That's an impact crater?
Yes, as is the Gulf of Mexico. That's
well,
the one that killed off the
Gulf.
guy.
Well, yeah, I knew about that one, but the Hudson Bay I did not know was an impact.
Meteorite hits the Alaskan shield or the Canadian shield at that point, gouged out Hudson's Bay. And I think most of the ejecta of that one is at the bottom of the Arctic Ocean somewheres.
Mm.
Oh, and good. We're getting heat out of the radiators for the first time in 6 months. I turned the furnace on this morning. So now let's see. Another chunk of Moldavite. This one I have to light behind because it is so thick and dense that you can only see the green when I shine light through it.
Okay,
yeah, I lucked out.
Yeah, that's Moldavite Grain.
Yes. And you see how it resembles, excuse me, I got to hold 2 stones in one hand. You see how it resembles its artificial?
Yeah.
But there's a depth of the color to the real thing that just is not there in the artificial one.
Yes, but I've seen some unscrupulous people. Now, you can also get this green in a material called Gaia Stone or Helenite, which is basically you chuck the ash from Mount St. Helens in a furnace or you run a blowtorch over it. And it vitrifies and becomes dark green. Beautiful stuff. I have a chunk of it once again somewheres, but I did not bring that along. But that's another example of non-Moldavite that sometimes gets sold as Moldavite, especially as chemically they're rather similar.
Okay.
Now, one of the ways you can tell, for example, Moldavite is it is transparent. It's the only one. Yeah, it and Libyan desert glass are the only 2 that are actually of gem quality. Indeed, of the Libyan desert glass, in the funerary necklace of King Tut, there's this huge yellow scarab. That's carved out of Libyan desert glass.
Really?
Yes. Okay. Let's see. I've got that. That's the Moldavite. Now, this is an interesting one. Yeah, it looks like a rock. I wish I'd been able to find a thinner one, but if you'll notice, when I put a light against it, it becomes translucent. This is one from Indonesia. It goes under the name. Yes, it does bring luck. It is intensely protective. I carry 2 pieces of it, and I've got another piece in a necklace that I'm wearing. This is called an Agnimanite, a fire pearl, sometimes known as a Tibetan Tectite. Now, oh, that's right. I forgot to pull the Tibetan one out. Excuse me. Got to find my bag of rocks again, because I have a huge bag of Tectites, and That's what that one is. Duh. Yes, Tectites come from all over the world. Also, another nice piece of Moldavite that I had that is part of a necklace. Unfortunately, the band went bye-bye. Yes, one of its companion pieces. Another chunk of Libyan desert glass. This one is smaller, but rather nice looking. And then we have, I forgot to put out the Tibetan. Got a bunch of the garden variety with me because those are always useful. Among other things, let me finish, excuse me, putting the ones I don't need away so I don't lose them. The spherical ones are also Agni Manites. At least they come from the same Indonesian strew field that this beast does. I lucked out and found a bunch of them for $2 each, which in and of itself, you try carrying a bag of those around for a few hours, and you'll see what happens to you, because these things stimulate pretty much every chakra in the body.
Mm.
Yes. Yeah. Moldavite especially works on the third eye and crown chakras. Another one, let's see, going back to the common or garden variety Tectite, is, how to explain it? It's very good for protecting you from malignant extraterrestrials, according to everything I have read about it. So if you are worried that you are going to get kidnapped, probed, and perhaps implanted, and you'll notice I'm using the skeptical voice on this part because that's something I've seen in a couple of books on stones, specifically in the Book of Stones by Robert Simmons, that this, like I said, this will protect you. I'm also wondering.
Well, I'm
if,
sorry about the top of my head. I'm filling your pillboxes.
Which one is that? This is the common Tectite. They come from South America, from China, from Morocco. This is basically what happens when you blow rock off the moon and it makes it to Earth and fuses into a somewhat glass-like material. That's why they kind of mostly have a rounded shape, because they pass through the atmosphere and it does weird things to it. The reason you get the odd shapes in the Moldavite is because this stuff is a mixture of terrestrial material and extraterrestrial, because the entire Moldau River Valley complex, this one, the one I am holding now, or this one? Yeah, part moon, part asteroid. Though the asteroid probably vaporized on impact. I can't tell you what crater, but
well, what if I were to ask for it? What would I ask for?
What for this?
Yeah.
You could just go to a rock store and look for the bin of Tektites. Okay. Those are the most common ones. They may have them broken down by region. For example, that one came out of a bin of Moroccan Tektites.
Okay.
This, like I said, this is Moldavite. This is perhaps the it's the top of the line of Tektites, especially from a metaphysical standpoint, because this happened when an asteroid or meteor slammed into what is now the Moldau River Valley. And this is ejecta. It's partially terrestrial material and partially extraterrestrial. And it was, the reason it has this kind of, they refer to it as a leaf pattern, is because it cooled while flying through the air. Basically, more common Tektites look more like raindrops. Indeed, a lot of the Czech Tektites have this long, smooth, curved surface when they flew. Hold on, let me get one of those out of the bag. Like this one. let me use the other hand. It is a spherical mass. As you can see, it is not translucent, unlike the ognimanite. That's one way you can tell a standard Tectite from an ognimanite. Those come specifically from Indonesia. And like I said, okay, yeah. Like I said, once again, if you shine a light up to it, or if it's been polished, you see it has kind of a grayish brown translucence. These things, now it's a good thing I'm built like, basically my nervous system was made out of Romex, because these things are supposed to open up your crown chakra to pretty much everything. I'm handling it like it's a chunk of quartz. Let's see, what else do I have? Yes. Before ognimanite, we had these. This one comes from the Tibetan Plateau. You'll notice it also has a translucent brownish look to it. Brownish green, actually. You could, actually, if you could get a large enough one, and these days that would probably cost you several $100s, you could have it polished like I had, excuse me, almost lost it. This one, basically, if you can see, this was half of a piece that I found that was cut and one half was polished. So given that these are basically vitrified material, translations, forms of glass, but very special glass, yes, you could. If you had one, say, a large one like this, cut in half and polished, you could scry in it like an obsidian mirror. So let's see, other ones. I have an example of another one. This is from Tasmania, of all places. This is called Darwin Glass or Darwin Stone. And once again, you can see it is vaguely translucent. Basically, on the island of Tasmania, there is a volcano called Mount Darwin. Well, part of Mount Darwin is missing because it got hit by a rather large meteorite. And this is some of the material that was gouged out. I managed to get hold of 2 pieces. See if this one shows. Some of them are translucent, some of them aren't. But once again, the higher energy stones tend to have a translucence that the more common ones don't. So all of these act as chakra stimulants. And by the way, this is Tibetan black quartz, which basically comes out of the same beds. Yes, it looks like it is basically a black included. Well, if it was from the United States, it would be a Herkimer diamond, but it is comes out of the same beds that these come out of, the Tibetan Tektites, and they work very well together. Once again, opening chakras. I don't know why either mine are so massively open I can't tell, or they're welded shut. So I am trying to get a hold of some examples of what is called Bendicite. Those come from Texas, and those are the ones that were produced when the Gulf of Mexico was gouged out. They find them all the way from the Big Bend region on the Rio Grande all the way into Georgia. Talk about a blast, but that was the blast that killed the dinosaurs, or most of them. So what are their purposes? Mostly they are energy stimulants, bringers of enlightenment. They wake people up. I'm not sure if I have enough to actually ever wake myself up because, well, I walk around with these in a bag in my pocket every bloody day. I wear a piece of Moldavite. I wear a piece of desert glass. Nothing happens. I am not being a cynic because I know other people feel it, and it may just be I've become so familiar with this stuff. When we have an actual changing times, changing worlds where we are physically together, I will teach this class again, and this will be a pass around thing where people get to fondle my rocks. That's one possibility. It is one possibility that my window is just so open, but I find that hard to believe. Or maybe that just is a story I tell myself, that my chakras are so closed that they are permanently welded shut. I'm not my friend Steve, who is literally he's not quite a psychic null, but he is damn close. So, like I said, this one is also especially good because of its yellow color for stimulating the sacral chakra. That is number 3 up the hit parade. I've never seen any orange ones, but those would be particularly interesting because those would stimulate the second chakra, which is the sexual one. I can imagine what that would do. So, and once again, not Moldavite. Beautiful stuff. And by the way, Chipicon, for your case, this is synthetic green obsidian, which is a fancy way of saying glass from a furnace somewhere in China. But I've seen it sold as both Moldavite and Helenite. And there is one other that I hope to acquire by the time we have our next physical changing times, and that is a material. Yes, exactly. Thank you, Feather. Because I could easily turn this into a mold and cast it using melted. Well, I could probably just use melted soda bottles, or melted Genesee cream ale bottles, because those are a beautiful shade of green. But there is, like I said, there is one other. It's kind of a pseudo Tectite, but I wouldn't. Once I finally get a sample, it is called Trinityite. Now, Trinityite is rather unique in that it is available in one place in the world, Alamogordo, New Mexico. And it was produced in 1945 when the second atomic bomb, the basically twin brother to the one they dropped on Nagasaki, was detonated in the Trinity experiment to make sure that the plutonium bomb would actually work. Most of it will still be radioactive for at least another 2,000 to 3,000 years. The really good pieces that are the same sort of green as Moldavite is are still intensely radioactive, but there are some pieces coming on the market now, small ones that were at the edge of the blast zone, that they're no longer putting out gamma radiation. They're putting out alpha and beta, and they're permanently sealed in plastic containers that, yes. Yeah, I've seen some of those. Yeah, they are very good fakes. The thing is, Moldavite got so popular, it is getting very, very hard to find real ones. I've seen pieces this size for going for as much as $500 these days, and I paid about $75 for it. I paid about $40 for this, but that was at a very specialized rock show in the East Coast Gem and Mineral Show, and I can get into the wholesale ends because I have Kathy's in my business has a resale license. Because they are becoming intensely rare. There is a limited amount of this stuff. What was that last statement? Excuse me, I need to go to chat for a second. Okay, thank you. Yes, they are. They're basically rare because, like I said, there's only a limited amount of it. There was only so much created when the meteorite hit Central Europe. Most of the big pieces have been harvested, and they're either in museums or they are in the hands of collectors like me or like you. I have also, I must admit, I used to go, when we would go to rock shows, I would find dealers who had little chip-sized pieces about the size, well, maybe about half the size of this. Like I said, once again, this is Darwin Glass from Mount Darwin in Tasmania. And they were selling them for $3 to $4 each, and I would just clean them out. So I have several bags down in the basement of good-sized Moldavite chips that I use. Well, they do something amazing because for a lot of people, even if you can't feel rocks, for a lot of people, you can feel this pretty well. And like I said, this is a pretty one. It's got the leaf pattern that is, you only really find in Moldavite. Like I said, Tibetan Tectite, they tend to come in either droplets or sheets. Like I said, I got this one because it specifically is translucent because it's so thin. Most of them have a brownish color. The other thing is, these are popular because being a clear green, they make very nice jewelry. You can polish an agnemanite, and it's kind of a shiny brownish stone that only shows up when you hold a light behind it. It's the same with Tibetan Tectite or Darwin Stone or Darwin Glass. These, they're not as rare, partially because most of the deposits are in the middle of areas that they had a war in the middle of. There are still, you have to pick your way through old Italian and British minefields to get a lot of this stuff. So, you know, it's also considerably more common. It also makes very nice jewelry, but, you know, like I said, King Tut's funerary necklace. Okay, let's see. It is about 20 of at this point. So questions, please.
Well, I was wondering, you talked about Moldavite, and I hear people saying they feel it, they don't feel it. And I kind of mapped that over, and I realized, I just posted in chat briefly, that possibly people like me who have relatively low energy and might feel the Moldavite more strongly because they need the activation energy more than you do. And anybody who has developed their energy as stone energy or whatever, you've kind of graduated past that.
Maybe so, but I love these rocks. I do love them. They're I believe one time when we did a stone workshop at Changing Times, it was referred to as the petting zoo, and it very definitely is.
Well, you know, Starwolf, I suddenly just had this wonderful thought.
Yes.
Do you think there's any significance to the fact that Moldavite comes from where my father's ancestors came from?
Could very well be.
I mean, his people are from that area.
Mm-hmm.
And I suddenly realized that there are all these connections we don't notice. And that one just sort of into my head.
That is a possibility. Also, remember, if you are into the Grail myths,
Mm.
Moldavite has been referred to as the lapis excelsius, the stone of the Holy Grail.
Oh, okay.
Oh, really? It has?
Yeah, well,
okay.
Especially if you're into the more like the story of Parsifal, and not so much the English version of the Grail myths, but the Central European Grail myths.
Okay.
Oh, right.
So,
and that could be very different because
yes.
we've noticed how much different the Central European mythology is from the same mythology from more Western Europe and England.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, I found more Tectites. God, I have them. Yeah, basically more little rocks. Let's just see. We'll do this. We'll do the light test. Basically, not getting any. Trying to get this. Nope. Try not to blind people, among other things. There is a little translucence. So these were sold as, once again, as Agni-Manites. But if you look at the two of them, these are considerably smoother than the, which has kind of a rough surface to it. It's almost got a slag-like surface. But I really need somebody who's more sensitive than I am to go through these and help me do the yes, no, yes, no. I know these come from the same island in Indonesia where these come from. They are from the same strew field. They are from the same island. And they're called strew fields because these aren't mined so much as found, because they're usually within the top meter or so of dirt. And they wear, some of them are smoother because they have been worn out of the ground. So you don't dig Tectites, you kind of walk around the areas they exist and you pick them up.
Because when the impactor hits the ground and creates these, they go flying, and they call it a strew field because it's like somebody spreading grain. And Carenza has come up with a really neat idea here, talking about back with my anthropologist hat on, that one has trace minerals in their bone from the area where they were born in. Test can pinpoint where the person's bones came from, are from. And so I have to believe that my father's fathers growing up in this area must have accumulated some of that.
Could very well be, because some of it had to have been rendered into dust or even smaller particles. And it would have been, excuse me, it would have been in the water. It would have been in the food. It would have been, well, the old saying, you got to eat a peck of dirt before you die.
Yeah.
It would have been on the vegetables.
Ubiquitous in the environment, really.
Hey, Starwolf, who said that? Even my mother never said anything like that. She was from the South. So
I got it from my grandmother, who came from, even though she was an actress, she was an Indiana doctor's daughter.
Okay.
And I got that from my paternal grandmother. You got to eat a peck of dirt before you die.
It's
I'm going to remember the
dirt on it. It's basically telling the kid not to be a wuss when they get dirt in their mouth.
Yeah. Yep. And have
you done any elixirs?
I have a couple. They're sitting right now on the kitchen windowsill, because I like to do elixir. I pulled, now that we're getting freezes, I pulled the elixirs in from the area that they were sitting, because I don't want the bottles to shatter. Because I actually scraped the windshield this morning when I got up.
Oh.
We've done that a few times already. So it's that time.
Yes, so but you are living You are living a couple of 100 miles further north than I am. Remember,
right.
I am literally, I'm less than 20 miles from Long Island Sound. So.
Oh, geez. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we're in Syracuse, which is one of the snow capitals of the world.
Yes, you are. Second only to Buffalo and Elmira.
Right.
And we fight it out every year. But
yes.
I was looking at the fact that in terms of, like, if you look at climate zones for growing seasons, we're about 2 seasons left of you. So I'm not surprised. I've actually had ice rather than just dew on the car a couple of times.
Yeah, but for me, it's a case of this was the first morning it has actually been cold enough for me to actually have frost.
Okay.
Basically, when I'm making gemstone elixirs, I simply use filtered water out of our Brita. So I don't use alcohol. I don't use brandy. I can't drink, so it would be useless. I'm not fond of the vinegar-based elixirs because they're
that's an acid.
Yeah, but I know some people who can't have alcohol use vinegar as a base for gemstone elixirs. I prefer to just use water. I mean, in an emergency, you can use tap water.
Yeah.
But we run our tap water through a Brita for drinking, which gives me basically about as clean a set of water as you can get.
Yeah.
So,
what would be an elixir emergency?
The first I'd ever heard of elixirs was when my daughter did a paper for high school, and she showed me about the rose quartz, which is good for against headaches. So what are these?
Well, that would depend. Once again,
opening up the third eye, what?
Third eye, crown chakra. Also, oddly enough, I find a Moldavite elixir is very good for a general energetic tonic.
Oh, okay.
Usually combined with a couple of other, I mean, you really want to get somebody up and on the energetic level. Okay. No, yeah, I'm fine. I find that gemstone elixirs don't, at least for me, they don't tend to spoil. So, but I also tend to leave small pieces of the stone in the bottom of the bottles I use to make them. So they're constantly recharging.
It's better than
yeah. It's kind of the energetic equivalent of sourdough. You take some out, you put some in.
Well, it's like we have a bottle of apple cider vinegar with the mother in the bottom. And as long as you leave that in there, you know, they might find this bottle in a post-apocalyptic world and it'll still be fine.
Mm-hmm. Yes. But like I said, one of the ones is if you want to energetically get somebody up and dancing, I use Moldavite and amethyst together. Let them soak. Yeah, well, like I said, I've managed to collect many pieces of Moldavite because I am an acquisitive little magpie when it comes to certain rocks.
Mm-hmm.
Moldavites, Herkimer diamonds, Tectites in general. I got to start becoming more inquisitive with the common meteorites.
Mm.
Now, if I could only get my hands on the one at the Peabody Museum in Yale, but
well, good luck with that.
It weighs 400 pounds and is sitting on a landing halfway up a staircase. I don't think I can get my car up there.
Yeah, but you could get the Tectite down.
No, this isn't a Tectite. This is a meteor.
You could get the meteor down.
This is an iron meteorite about this big in one direction, and I can't even.
I've seen pictures.
It's several hundred pounds of meteoric iron.
If it's up the stairs, then gravity just.
Well, yeah.
I worry. I also worry about the Yale police getting there before I could get it out the door.
I was going to say, even with several strong friends, you would probably all end up in jail. So, dream on.
Yeah, so what I will probably do is next August when the Gem and Mineral Show happens, I will be going specifically to acquire a specific type of meteorite for my lectures. There are 3 types besides the Tectite type. There are the iron meteorites, which everybody has heard of because, well, you know, I've made a blade using meteoric iron. Okay,
Star metal, star iron.
Yes, yes. Supposedly, the original Bowie knife contained a piece of meteoric iron when James Black was forging it. He melted a piece of an iron meteorite into the steel that he used to make Bowie's original knife.
Now there's a
well, that's impressive because the few things we've heard, we've seen people work with meteoric iron, and apparently it is a royal pain in the tuchus to get it to blend with any other metal.
That's because of the amount of silicate present in it.
Okay.
It can be done, and actually the best, if you live in Indonesia and you want to have a kris knife, that is the curvy bladed knife you see that comes specifically from the larger islands in Indonesia, especially Java. The best ones are made out of meteoric iron that has been basically given the Damascus process where it is drawn and folded and drawn and folded and forge welded, which in the process sets enough carbon into the edge that the edges become basically steel. It's rather the same principle. It's like using bloom iron from that comes from a furnace that creates bog ore, or uses bog ore. But getting back to meteorites, there are the iron meteorites. There are 2 other types. There are Stony or Chondrite meteorites that are basically, it's metamorphic rock from somewhere. It's probably the asteroid belt. Think of it as bits left over when the actual 5th planet shattered under the gravitational tug of war between the Sun and Jupiter. I've heard it referred to as Lucifer. Sometimes I've heard it called Vulcan, which is going to make certain pointy-eared individuals rather uncomfortable. But it's rock. I have a couple of examples of that. I could have just held up a stone and showed it to you. And then there is a unique one. They are called Pracelite meteorites. I think I pronounced it right. Those are a lattice of meteoric iron that contains minute olivine, also known as peridot crystals. And when they are properly sliced and polished and held up, they have this beautiful lace-like pattern of basically the gray of the iron and the green of the peridot. Olivine and peridot are different names for the same rock. Here on Earth, peridots are found, well, you can get a lot of them on the big island of Hawaii right now because that's part of what's getting, most of them they're formed basically deep in magma pockets. And when those pockets get shot up into the air, like they do with the volcanoes in Hawaii, peridot crystals basically condense out of the whole mess.
Okay.
Of course, that means you have to go into an area that you're not supposed to go into and start sifting through the ash to find them.
Tacky detail.
And catching fire in the process.
No, because I believe the current eruption has calmed down and it's mostly heading towards the sea. It's no longer going through people's houses. Though if you want to go to the Canary Islands, you can get them there too. Because the big one there has been erupting now for over a month and has added some, I believe it's 10 square kilometers to the island of Las Palmas. That if it ever cools down will be some prime beachfront property.
Now, you're talking about types of meteorites. I was aware of 2 other types, and I don't know where they fit into your scheme. Well, actually, one is pretty obvious, the stony iron meteorite.
Yes,
which is obviously a hybrid.
Yes, of an iron meteorite and a chondrite.
Right, and then there's the carbonaceous chondrites. Now,
I don't have an example of those because the last time I priced one, it was in 4 digits, and there were no pennies involved.
Wow.
Mostly because those things tend to either burn up or explode.
Yeah, they do tend to detonate in the air, and they are pretty scarce, but they are a fascinating part of the mix.
If anyone can locate me one for less than $200, I might be interested in buying it, just so I have one to pass around.
Mm.
The problem being, once again, a lot of times when you have these fireballs that explode in the air, those were carbonaceous meteorites that didn't make it to the ground because they reached the point where everything went boom.
Right, and it's possible that Tunguska was a carbonaceous chondrite of considerable size.
Massive, yes.
That
because
they flattened the forest for miles.
There is no crater, and nobody has ever located Tectites in that area. Right, so it was not your standard meteor strike.
Mm-hmm.
And these days, you know, most meteor strikes don't create craters quite of the magnitude that generate Tectites. Though I must admit, I need to get to Arizona someday, in my dreams, and see if there are any if the meteor crater in Arizona ever produced Tectite-like formations.
I've never heard whether it did or not, but that is, on a relative scale, a fairly big crater of the sort that you can get without blowing up the Earth.
And a fairly young one too, because it is still, you know, you can still see the little pile in the middle that is the remains of the actual meteorite. So theoretically, there should be some embedded at least in the crater wall, if not blown out over the horizon.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, like I said, I have never heard of it. Like I said, I'm hunting down some bendicites for the same purpose that I want a complete collection, but people keep finding new ones. I will hopefully have a Trinitite piece of Trinityite to pass the little container around, and if somebody could bring a Geiger counter, we can, you know, run it over and watch it go click, 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 click. Any preppers in our group that have a dosimeter or a Geiger counter that they'd be willing to bring along? I have to admit,
that's one bit of technology I have never had occasion to get, and I'm probably glad for that.
I've had no need for one either.
It's gone, so.
Yeah, I've had no need for one of those.
Canyon Diablo meteorites, most famous impact in the world. Okay.
So
they find iron meteorites apparently, but
no Tectites. It may not have been moving fast enough or been massive enough.
Diamonds they're talking about too.
Interesting, black diamonds.
Yeah. I'm looking at
I've never heard any estimates on the size of the impactor or the relative velocity, which is kind of interesting because usually we're able to figure these things out.
Top item on that page.
I think the iron meteorite in Yale may be a chunk from the Diablo Canyon impact.
I think you're right.
I believe that's where it's from. Which may also explain why. That's just it. Part of it is these hit so long ago and were so large that they basically altered climates and basically moved not just a small amount of the terrain around, but in the case of the ones that gouged out the Gulf of Sirte, the Gulf of Mexico and Hudson's Bay, they made major changes in the geography. Yeah,
and I remember, I don't know where I'd find it again, but I saw an animation that was the result of a lot of geological work over years about the Chicxulub impactor in the Yucatan. And the thing that was so terrifying was what they were animating was the way the crust and the mantle and the stuff above it went
bent.
Ooh. Oh, there were waves. It was like watching a pebble hit water. And I'm thinking, this is rock.
If you want a real-time example of a ground wave, there was a fireworks company. Their store of ammonium nitrate, which was held in a bunker out in the desert somewheres, went off. And somebody actually managed to catch the ground wave expanding out from the blast point as the desert ripples under the effect. And then suddenly the camera starts to vibrate because the ground wave has reached the photographer.
Oh, wow.
Ooh,
yes.
wee.
And inspired.
Yes. And we're talking, you know, not quite an SS Mont Blanc level explosion. For those of you who do not understand, the Mont Blanc was a freighter that exploded during the First World War in Halifax Harbor. It was loaded with ammonium nitrate for the making of artillery shells.
Oh,
is that still the world's largest non-nuclear explosion? I
believe it is. At least the world's largest man-made non-nuclear explosion.
Right. That was
Krakatoa and Mount Tabora, I think, are bigger, but those are natural explosions.
Well, I'm talking about things that we blew up without using nukes. And I remember Halifax as being like, the description of it was just appalling.
Yes. I think the largest piece remaining of the ship is about 2 feet by 5 feet. I saw it years ago when we visited Halifax, and we were in the museum, and there was a chunk of the hull. It was recovered from 20 miles away.
Oh, geez.
That's a blast radius for you.
Yes. Well, you've got to understand, there were several, I don't know exactly the amount, but tons, hundreds of tons of ammonium nitrate, which is, it was a nasty explosion. But getting back to meteorites and tektites, let me just check the...
Yes, please.
It's actually a little bit after 9.
Right. So how are you doing there?
I can a few more minutes, but then I'm going to have to stop and eat.
Okay.
Because once again, I don't eat beforehand, but no problem. We got Chinese, so I will just be throwing something into the microwave. So, like I said, when we have an actual physical changing times again, I will be teaching this class, and I will also be giving away to everybody who shows up a semi-polished garden variety Tectite.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I bought a string of them years ago, and the project for which I was going to use them is not going to happen. So now they are gimmies.
Very nice. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
Okay.
So, any more questions?
What was the project?
It was going to be a necklace. They turned out to be too big and chunky. Plus, I was under the impression they were a different material. And then somebody looked at it and said, no, these are Tectites.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Oh, here's one of my favorite little Tectites because it's got the bumpy surface, and on one side, it's got this weird little crater on it.
Oh, nice.
Oh,
yeah.
Like a Death Star.
Yes, many ways. This is one of the more common shapes because it goes flying through the air while molten, and like the old process for producing.
Drag brings it back. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Basically, for the old process for producing shotgun shot, where they would basically pour molten lead through a sieve at the top of a tall tower with a bucket or a tank of water at the bottom, and the lead drops would turn into spheres, and the spheres would in turn end up cooling at the bottom. I believe they only tore the Colt Shot Tower in New Haven down a few years ago.
Mm.
Mostly because it had so much lead residue in it, they couldn't build anything around it without
Millions of dollars of mitigation.
Yeah. So, are there any final questions?
Well, this might be where I get a chance to say, which I didn't at the beginning. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you want me to put your website in the chat, or do you use that much anymore?
We don't use that much anymore, unfortunately. If you want to put the Facebook page, I tend to visit that more often.
Okay, I'll get that. And I will remind everyone that we are going to be changing times is starting in less than a week. It'll be
yes,
Monday through Friday in the evenings, and classes and panels all day Saturday and Sunday. And
yes,
if you register for it, you can choose between whether you want both everything that comes on live, and either a month or a year of being able to go back and rewatch them as much as you like at your own convenience. So this
and I'm pleased to see apparently that one panel I had signed up for has actually not been canceled.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, and it's one that's kind of close to me, and that is dealing with death. So
the panels that didn't run, I'm quickly lining up the people who were going to be on them to be in shows during the year. So we also get the ongoing Otherworldlies once a week to extend our changing times, changing worlds.
Works for me.
Yep.
Okay.
So we should let Starwolf go eat.
Yes.
Yes.
First off, I have to put everything back in the bag, because if I stand up right now, it's going to be
it'd be a mess.
Yes, it will be.
And I do have one small parting shot. I looked up the Halifax